Anybody, anywhere,
It's time to take command.
The Cardiac Commanders are the Clutch Commanders!
With former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen.
This pass caught by Paulsen, the tight end.
And from 106.7 The Fan, Grant Paulsen.
This is Take Command with Logan Paulsen and Grant Paulsen. Logan played a decade in the NFL, breaks the tape down for us, gives us detailed analysis on the upcoming opponent each and every week in our Look Ahead pod. I'm Grant Paulsen, 106.7 The Fan, 2 to 6:30, Grant and Danny every single day. You can watch us on the Fan or Team 980 YouTube pages. And, of course, download, subscribe, rate, review, do all the podcasty stuff wherever you get your audio. We give you 3 pods a week. We give you one right after the game. We give you a breakdown of the film a couple days after. And then we do a Look Ahead pod. That is today's installment. Logan, you look very good this morning. Looks like you're fresh out of the shower. Beard, I'm not going to say is as well maintained as mine, but it's in a good place overall. You've cleaned it up.
Thank you.
How are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. Good. Excited to talk some football as always, but always good seeing you too, man. And that well manicured, lined up face.
Thank you. Fresh haircut yesterday, so I had to clean up the beard this morning to match. So I'm feeling.
Does your barber do that? I'm actually looking for a barber that does both. But
yes, you need a barber, not a stylist, to do that. They need to be able to go straight edge right on the neck and the face. But no, the guy I went to yesterday did not do that. I walked in right at the end. He's like, I got to roll out. I can't do that. So I had to do it today at home. But yeah, that's normally the deal for my barber. I'm just bad at making appointments. I'm a walk-in guy.
Yeah, me too. I'm a big walk-in guy because I'm like, I got like 45 minutes. Let's do it, so.
You got kids, you're a walk-in guy. I think that's the way it works. All right, let's talk Falcons here. There's a lot to chew on for this matchup. Atlanta got shut out by the Carolina Panthers. They ran into a buzzsaw that was an 0-2 bad football team, it appears. I want to start with their offense here because I think there's a lot to get to when you watch it.
Yeah,
this is like a maddening watch in a lot of ways. Let's just start with the fact it's Raheem Morris is the head coach who was under Sean McVay in LA, second year now in Atlanta. He has Zach Robinson, who he brought over from LA under McVay, former PFF guy as his OC. Jeff Ulbrich, who is the interim head coach of the Jets, is the defensive coordinator here. Terry Fontenot, the GM, has been in and out of some hot water just for the job he's done over the last year and change. They're 1-2. But when you look at this Falcons offense, what do you see?
Yeah, I mean, it's a loaded question. So I'm going to try to unpack it like one level at a time. So basically, I think one of the biggest issues with the group, starting from the jump, is their right tackle, Caleb McGarry, got hurt earlier this offseason, I think during training camp. And then Storm Norton, their backup right tackle, also got hurt. So they kind of had to go scouring practice squads and found Elijah Wilkerson, number 71 for them. And it is a significant drop-off. I think the O-line as a whole is playing okay. You got Matthew Bergeron at left guard, Ryan, I can't even say his name, Nultz, and then Chris Lindstrom, who to me is one of the better guards in the NFL, with Jake Matthews, who's been, a consummate pro since he came to the league. But I do think the weak spot is Elijah Wilkerson, and I do think they've kind of shied away from stuff that made them really, really good for a long time, which is like, hey, we're going to run the football, we're going to be patient, and we're going to be very deliberate about finding play action shots. And so I always, when I'm thinking about, levels of the field in terms of offense, it's like you got your deep third, you got your middle third, and you got your kind of stuff, your quick game, close to line of scrimmage, so your tight third. And they are a tight middle third team with basically zero over-the-top stuff, which is somewhat confounding to me. And I brought up the offensive line thing because I do think that's playing a factor in this. But one of the things that I think when you watch Michael Penix Jr. from college, when you watch him when he was successful last year, is he has one of the best arms in the NFL. Like I found a clip of him versus Tampa Bay just absolutely ripping this big out, right? And that's just not a feature of the offense in a way that I thought it was going to be, right? They're kind of in more drop back, more 5-6 man pros than I thought they would be. I thought they would be, hey, it's 2nd and 5. Let's put the ball, act like we're doing this ball fake. Let's get him up and let's let this thing air out down the field. And I understand Drake London is not the fastest guy in the world, but you do have Darnell Mooney, Chase Washington's banged up, but very fast guy, and Raymond McLeod are fast guys. And so the fact that that's just non-existent in the offense is somewhat confounding. And you feel defense is just kind of say, hey, here's the ceiling. We don't need to worry about this stuff down the field in the same way we thought we'd had to. And it makes for a very clunky watch, I think.
Well, you didn't even get to one of my biggest frustrations, which we're going to talk about in a minute, which is how little they rely on play action despite being a dominant running team, which we're going to talk about.
So that's kind of what I'm getting to there. Like to get to that deep third element, right? It's not your 5-6-man pros usually. It's the play action shots. You keep the tight ends in, you keep the backs in, you build a wall, and then you get those receivers attacking the shell of the coverage. And it's just not a feature. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And like you always talk about, and like we've talked about off the air, like one of the easy buttons in the NFL is play action shots, right? Those are explosive chunks with great protection, easy reads for the quarterback. Shoot, like that's how the Detroit Lions saved Golf's career, is with play action shots down the field, right? And they get to it a bunch of different ways, but that's the crux of it. And so to not access this seems like a big oversight from them.
When you're a dominant run team, I mean, that's the thing. What frustrates me so much when you watch Atlanta is, so they always run the ball well, pretty much. I mean, they've got, in my opinion, right now, the best running back in football in terms of completeness in Bijan Robinson. He's gained 159 of 239 total rushing yards outside the tackles this season, second most in the NFL. You can't get him down at first contact. It's a league leading 139 yards after contact on outside zone, 4.2 yards after contact on his runs, which is the fifth highest mark among running backs with at least 15 carries outside tackles that we've seen via Next Gen Stats. This is a stud. He does it out of the backfield. He does it as a running back, at least 90 scrimmage yards in 8 straight games, longest active streak in the NFL. Even in this game, they get shut out, Logan. Okay, so you get beat 30-0. And in that game, Robinson ran for 72 yards on 13 carries. Like, he was still uber effective, but it doesn't amount to anything in the passing game. So I wonder, do you think it's that they're protecting the offensive line? Because like when I hear that, I think about the Chiefs. The Chiefs take a lot of shots down the field. They don't even have the personnel to do it. Now they're doing it to Tyquan Thornton. But if you look at it, it's bells and whistles. They're moving the pocket. They're rolling Patrick Mahomes out. Like, they don't trust their offensive line sometimes. So then Mahomes does a thing where he like drops back 15 extra yards and buys time. They find ways to do it, and the Falcons don't.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is like, one of the things that they did to insulate the group, with the previous offensive staff was like a lot of play action, right? Because it is an easier down for the offensive lineman, right? Like I can get on the player quickly. They think it's run. They kind of magnet to the block first, so I get hands on, and then I can kind of play basketball with you afterwards if it's a good play action fake. When you have Bijan Robinson, like that's what works. And one of the reasons you run a lot of outside zone is it helps with the protection kind of principles, right? So if I'm running gap scheme runs for play action shots, you got to pull a guard, and it does stress elements of the slide coming back to take up that guard, that space that guard's vacating. So you run all this outside zone stuff, and again, you can create these nice pockets, create these nice slides, and really simple downs for the offensive line. And so maybe Wilkerson's struggling with that. I don't know. Like it just seems like you're putting him in a situation where, like, I think this is a great example. So the hardest down for an offensive lineman is a 3-step drop from the gun. So basically 5-step drop from under center, because no one does 7-step drops anymore, right? That's the hardest down for an offensive lineman. And instead of shying away from that, it almost seems like they're leaning into it. So you get these downs where, again, the offensive line I think is playing okay, but there's like these crazy compressed pockets. And I look at the way, as a point of comparison, the way Cliff called the game versus the Las Vegas Raiders, where it's like there's a couple dropbacks, but the majority of it's quick game, the majority of it's play action, and they're able to find explosive chunks that way. It just doesn't seem like it's an element of what they're doing, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because like you said, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algiers is doing a great job. He's a very efficient runner. And so why not lean more into that? Why not insulate the quarterback more and then build off of that, like with some keepers, some boots, which they do run, but again, the frequency is lower than I would expect. And then the play action element is just non-existent. So I don't have a good reason as to why, because I'm a Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, I'm that tree of player. And so I'm like, why isn't this a part of it, right? Explosives lead to points, and that's an easy way to find explosives. Why aren't we doing it?
Yeah, they had 0 points in their last game and benched Michael Penix, 2 interceptions. Now, they're going to be better than that this weekend. I've heard a lot of people chirping about, okay, you know, this is a bad Falcons team, whatever. They're not as bad as they played. It's a week-to-week league. Go back to the Minnesota game, and their defense dominated. We'll get to their defense, next segment. But James Pierce right now is the number 2 in pressures among rookie edges. So they've got some things cooking on that side of the ball. And we've seen them play at a high level. Also, Washington's super banged up. So this is not the Raiders to me, where they're coming cross country on 5 days rest, and you've been, sitting around for 10 days. I think this is going to be a different, more complicated matchup on the road. I still think Washington will win. But to drill down on some of the specifics on offense here, Logan, let's go to Washington stopping the run here, because that could be a big theme. So we mentioned Bijan Robinson and how good he is. 4th most missed tackles already generated. The 3rd most tackle yards, after missed tackle, 87 this season in the NFL. Will be top 5 for a 3rd straight year in those categories. What's your plan to corral him and to slow him down? They've done an awesome job against the run. To me, this is by far the biggest test they're going to have.
Yeah, and I think it's just been more consistent up front in general. So I think when you look at guys like Goldman, who I don't know if we shouted him out on the review show, but really had a very solid game in terms of sitting double teams, keeping the linebackers clean. I think Joe Wood Jr. had a really nice plan too, with some movement and some pressures, especially on run downs. I think you can probably throw some of those same pitches because they're really effective. But I think good run defense at its core comes down to, can I maintain my gap integrity, right? Which, again, on some of the explosive runs that Ashton Genty had, there was a little bit of issue with that for some of the guys in the front. Like Kinlaw on double teams gets a little bit high. He's been so explosive. He's been so dynamic. But, in a double team situation, sometimes he's peeking over the block and we're able to get a little bit of movement. So being really disciplined about pad level, being really disciplined about hand placement, being really disciplined about maintaining my gap and fitting the blitz or the pressure in the correct gap is going to be extremely important. And I think the other thing that people often sleep on is good run defense is just simple math, right? If you have 7 blockers, I have 8 defenders. If you have 6 blockers, I have 7 defenders. And that's a really easy way to make sure that you're good. And so when you look at Derrick Henry in Tennessee, for example, everyone's like, Derrick Henry's cooked. He's terrible. He saw more heavy boxes than any other player during that time when he was in Tennessee, right? And so to me, it's just one of the reasons the Seattle defense was so good is they could always play an 8-man box because their safety and secondary players were so good. So how do you do that? And this is going to be a little bit more challenging because we haven't even talked about this yet, but I do think Atlanta has very dynamic skill position players. Drake London's one of my favorite receivers in the NFL. Kyle Pitts looks to be in great shape and is playing good ball at the moment, which is a little bit concerning for the Washington Commanders. But you can't allocate all these run-stopping resources when you have to cover these playmakers on the perimeter. Now, they're not super dynamic down the field, so you can kind of weigh some of that risk-reward stuff. But I do think that's something that I think Joe Wood Jr. has shown an ability to do, and it's got to be a point of emphasis, just hey, gap integrity, trust your gap, team defense, rally to the football. There's a couple clips that I've seen of Bijan there was a play versus Minnesota, for example, where he's going to step up on a blitz and it's a bad snap and he just catches it, right? His ability to get through the line of scrimmage, make the first guy miss, and then there's a secondary player that it looks like the secondary player passes through his body. I don't know how he made him miss in such close proximity, but you got to rally to that guy and get hats on him as much as you can because he is going to make the first guy miss. You have to account for that by running to him and then getting hats on him.
Yeah, so there's 2 things I worry about with Robinson. One is the pass catching game and who's going to defend him and what does that look like in the flat and just choice routes and things like that.
Terrifying, by the way. Terrifying.
I mean, he's the best in the league at it right now. And most teams don't have an answer, but I certainly don't think with all the injuries in the secondary, this group does necessarily. We'll get to that. But go ahead.
It's funny because you said, how do you stop the run? I'm not actually that concerned about it because, again, there are simple mechanical solutions to do it. The thing that gets me, and maybe you have some insight on this, is with Will Harris out, especially, who matches up on him? Do you have Mike Sanderstill match him in the nickel? Then Mike Sanderstill's in the box the whole time? Because I don't want Bobby Wagner. I don't want Frankie Luvu touching that if possible. He's just that dynamic. His ability after the catch is insane. If they go empty, who do you want to cover him? In the same way,
has to be a DB.
In the same way that Deebo Samuel presents all these matchup issues in the front, Bijan Robinson is the new Christian McCaffrey in that way.
Yes, 100%. I don't think he can be a linebacker, but that is the big fear. And then the other one is, I remember talking to you before the Atlanta game last year. So if people forget, it was like late season, 3 weeks left in the year or something. Obviously, we weren't doing Take Command together, but we were just chopping it up in the press box. And the numbers at that time were that Washington was one of the worst teams in the NFL at defending outside runs and specific outside zone. And my like working theory, and I don't remember what you told me, but I'll ask you now, was like, Bobby Wagner, to me, who's been unbelievable. I said yesterday on my show, I think he's been one of their 3 or 4 best players this year, coming off 2 sacks and 11 tackles. In a phone booth, like on the interior, badass, getting a guy on the ground, like funnel things to him, and there's nobody better in that role right now. But like running sideline to sideline is not it anymore. And so conceptually, to me, like this kind of matchup where teams want to kind of stretch you out and go wide is not going to be as good a matchup for Washington. It's too early in the year to look at the numbers on like how they've handled runs inside, outside, whatever. But what's your thought on that? Because I just remember going into that Atlanta game, I was going, this is not something they're going to be able to defend well. The numbers say they don't. And then the Falcons chewed them up with Bijan, especially in the first half. Luckily, they went away from it.
Then they got away from it, which was weird. So what I will say is, one of the things, so outside zone. Right. Basically, outside zone is this idea that like we are going to run laterally as opposed to vertically into the team. So gap scheme runs, we're getting downhill, combinations, duos, powers, counters. We're pushing you off the ball and creating vertical creases. Here with outside zone, we're going to run to the sideline and you're going to have to run with us because what did we just talk about? Maintaining gap integrity. Right. So as you're running, someone along the way is going to get out of their gap. Our back's good enough to find it and we're going to gash you. So that was, when Mike Shanahan was in Denver, that's how they did it. Because teams would literally they'd play these big 6 techniques and they would literally just sprint, shoulders turned to the sideline to maintain gap integrity. Defenses have gotten a lot smarter in this regard over the last couple of years. And what they started doing is like, you know what, how we can defend this is what if we just penetrate this first combination? So that first tight end tackle combination or the tight end fullback combination and get vertical, right? With hat outside. Now there's an edge. So now everything is funneled back to the defensive tackle, to the 3 technique, to the middle linebacker, to the pursuit on the end, right? Because they don't block the backside end a lot of time on outside zones. So if you can set a hard edge, right, then everything cuts back and that's where the tackle happens. And so I think about back to my time when I was playing in like 2011, 12, 13, and we played Dallas. And DeMarcus Ware was in Dallas, right? And he was so good at getting hands on the tight end's chest, me, jacking me back into the running back, forcing the running back to cut back inside. Now he can play back across my face, and the 3 technique, who was Stat Hatcher for a couple of years, would come and make that tackle. And so I think like when you look at how to stop outside zone, it really comes down to having great edge play, right? And so Dante Fowler was here last year, very productive in a sack capacity, but not very disciplined and not very good at setting vertical edges. I look at Dorrance Armstrong, like he's great at that. Right.
Okay.
One of the reasons you bring him in is for that. Jalen Holmes is taking his place. I thought did a great job against the run last week. So let's not mess around. Let's be physical on the edges, get vertical, box that sucker in, and keep it in a phone booth and let Bobby Wagner and Frankie Luvu just kamikaze Bijan Robinson.
So when you watch, is it a lot of outside zone, or are they doing like pin and pull lion stuff? Are they running stretches? Like, I mean, what are they actually? I know that they're targeting outside the tackle a lot. Well, how are they doing it?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. They do it both ways, right? So, one of the things about Drake London that makes him so special, and one of the reasons he's one of my favorite players in the league, is he's physical on the perimeter, and he can win matchups with defensive linemen in some cases, and especially nickel players. And so they run a lot of pin pull. Like think about the play that the Patriots ran in the preseason that the Baltimore Ravens ran last year, where they kind of motion down, they crack the end, and they crack the linebacker, and they pull people out to the perimeter. So that's tough because it does change the gap math, right? Now all of a sudden that penetrating end we just talked about is getting pinned. We've got 2 guys to the perimeter. Now the force player, the edge player is the nickel or the safety player who's got to come fit that thing, and usually they're less effective at it, and so that becomes problematic. And so they do run outside zone, they do run duo, they do run kind of these weird, like fullback guard combinations, tackle kicking out type stuff, just to find angles in the run game. So you are going to have to present and learn how to fit different runs, but the principle is the same. For example, like I used to run a lot. I used to be the second puller in a lot of those pin pull plays. The receiver would crack down, old Logan Paulsen with his neck roll would run out and go block the corner. If the corner was on his stuff and triggered downhill right now and would cut my outside leg, it was a big pile, plays dead right away, right? If the corner got soft and saw the neck roll and got scared and backed up, we got action. Now, coach, we got action. So the principle of setting a tough vertical edge for outside zone with a defensive lineman, and then on these pin pull things with the corners, it's the same principle. It's just how do you coach the corner to get that done at a high level?
Yeah, I think those are the two areas defensively where they're either going to shine or it's going to be ahead of the sticks kind of 72 and sunny day for the Atlanta offense. Are they able to defend outside running game, which they couldn't in the first half last year? But as you said, the personnel is very different. I think Preston Smith could help if he's elevated.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Length,
Do we have any information on that?
We don't, but he's had a week and a half. I'd imagine that's enough time to get acclimated. I would assume he would play.
Yeah, I mean, long arm guy, great at setting edges. Like, I think it's a great point. And Jalen Holmes did a great job. I think Jean-Baptiste has some of that length, size stuff that gives you confidence he can get that done. So, yeah, I think the personnel is a lot better this year for that.
Before we move on, in terms of defending Robinson as a receiver,
I don't know
Sanders still out there. I mean, here's the big problem, right? Is the injuries right now make it hard to know who's going to be 100%. Amos comes out of the game. Percy Butler comes out of the game. Lattimore came out of the game, but is supposedly fine, not in the concussion protocol at this point. They were running with a lot of kind of spare part DBs at different points. And as you said, there are weapons here. I was surprised to hear how much you love Drake London. Maybe we could double click on that. But
I like a tough dude, man. Just like tough.
But he is used in a way that is so. He has 79% of his targets are under 10 air yards this year, sixth highest among wide receivers in the NFL. Like, whatever happened to the deep overs and why isn't he used like Mike Evans? You know, like this big physical box it out kind of receiver. Everything's kind of like stop routes and coming back to the line. It's very weird how they do it.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a Travis Kelce utilization and old Travis Kelce utilization than I would have thought, right? So I think that's the thing that's surprising but I love his physicality. I love his hands. I love his short area quickness. Like, he reminds me a lot actually of like Jordan Reed, like that kind of basketball crossover. I can run a choice even though I'm 6'5" type stuff. And just he's a competitive, tough dude, you know. And I do think his utilization through the first 3 games has been somewhat surprising to me, because I'm like, to your point, it's like, you can run a post, you can run a go. Let's get him a 50-50 opportunity down the field. He runs great comebacks. Like, that's just not been in the rapport, you know, for the first couple weeks of the season. So his utilization does not affect my liking of him. But I to your point, Grant, like, it's hard to get pumped for the way he's been used over the first couple weeks of the season. I think you're muted. Are you muted?
I'm like the old guy on a Zoom and COVID or something. How do I talk to you, Logan? Where'd you go? His lack of elite speed, I think, will keep him from being like a superstar receiver. But I agree with you. Like, in the conceptually, to me, and like the Kyle offense, like the ultimate Z, like could just do it, like so many cool things, and explosiveness isn't necessarily there, but he will box you out, win jump balls, and he's going to go 7 for 102 a lot. Like, there's going to be plenty of those games. And
they use him more like a tight end, you know, and I think that's where like maybe the utilization stuff comes, is like, I think you can do more receiver stuff, but they use him like a big slot more than they use him as a perimeter guy, which I think is probably some of the reason you feel some of that frustration.
Kyle Pitts can flat out run, not a start and stop guy, but he can run. Ray McLeod is dependable and can route people up. They need a little more out of Darnell Mooney. I'm surprised either by way of usage or play, like they haven't gotten enough out of him, but he's a speed guy, but they've got the weapons. So on the back end, what are you thinking defensively here if you're Joe Witt?
Yeah, I think that's maybe the biggest story of the day. I think I think Lattimore and Drake London seems like a match made in heaven, just a physical bar fight of a DB battle, you know, and I think that's great that he's healthy and can match up there. The Kyle Pitts one is interesting because I think Will Harris has done a great job on tight ends. He's been really, like Brock Bowers, the man-to-man coverage stuff, like really fantastic. And so not having him, it's like, who do you feel great in that coverage role? I think Percy's very dynamic in that regard, but again, nicked up. Revo, I'd probably kind of shy away from that. I think Revo's playing awesome, right? I think he's incredible downhill, physical. He's got great coverage instincts in zones, but I don't know if I want him in man coverage because the lack of length. So do you say, hey, Tyler Owens, this is your time to shine versus a guy in Kyle Pitts who I've been very down on, but over the first 3 games has looked different. Like, I don't know if it's his utilization. I don't know if it's his contract year or whatever it is. He is playing much better football and looking shades of the guy that was taken as a top 10 pick a couple years ago. So is it Tyler Owens, who, again, I think did a great job in man-to-man coverage at training camp, but this is a different animal, like, given the play volume that's in for the defense and, the variety of formations and fronts you're going to see from the Atlanta Falcons.
Lastly, I want to point out that Penix getting benched. Cousins came in the last game. He's going to start in this game. He's got more interceptions than touchdowns so far in his young career. We saw him have a brilliant drive at the end of the game at Northwest Stadium. And I mean, the throw he made into the end zone to kind of tie the game, I think it was back then, was pretty amazing. But it's been largely a struggle. And on Penix, what I found when I was diving into some of the numbers, he has been really, really flappable against pressure. I mean, that's where he has struggled immensely. When you get to him, you can really confuse him. Pressured on 34% of dropbacks, which is about average. It's not like a crazy number, by the way. It's actually a little bit below league average. But look at the numbers on that. Penix has posted a league low 15% completion percentage over expected, negative 15% when pressured. He's completing 13 of 29 passes, so 44%, 11th lowest, 173 yards, 1 touchdown. The Commanders have generated a league high in pressure rate, 50% this season, one of 2 teams with the Broncos that have pressured opponent quarterbacks on over half of their dropbacks. So Washington, they're a top 10 sacks team. They're the number 1 pressure team in the NFL right now, believe it or not. And you got Penix, who, when he's pressured, has been a mess. I love that part of this. Joe Witt went kind of ham with Bobby Wagner in the A-gap, 5 of 7 blitzes where he came downhill. He got to the quarterback, 2 sacks last week. I don't know if you do that again or what this looks like, Logan, but you got to get to Michael Penix because the numbers say when you do, plays die.
And sometimes you don't feel that, like the quarterback's able to find like explosive plays or it's not their fault, whatever it is. And we'll talk about that here with the Falcons defense in a second. But in the Carolina game, like he messes up a protection or he doesn't identify the blitz correctly and takes a brutal shot. And I think it affected him the rest of the game. Like it was a 4-man overload away from the slide. They did a great job, Carolina, in terms of getting them to send the slide a certain way. They brought 4 to the back, guys unblocked, rocks his ribs, man, jacks him up. And then the rest of the game, in those same looks, you can tell he's a little uncertain, a little unsettled. They're bringing simulated pressures, dropping guys out like he's trying to throw, kind of like they've got like a dagger concept with like this new concept where you go 4-week tight ends blocking for the back. And right as the ball gets to his hand, he's trying to throw the ball to the back. But it's his own pressure. You know what I mean? It's a simulated pressure. So guys are dropping out. They cover it. He's off the dig, which is wide open. He's all frazzled and then just throws the ball out of bounds on the sideline. And you're like, that was a tough down. And that was how it kind of went the whole game, right? I felt like the pressure coupled with just good disguises in the back end really unsettled him in a way that I was not expecting in Carolina. So, yeah, I think Joe Witt Jr., bring the band back, man. Bring those same pressures, maybe move guys around. You've done a great job targeting and identifying pressures and getting one-on-ones for Bobby. Can we get Frankie in some of those situations? But I'm like, hey, man, let's gas this thing up. Absolutely. And it doesn't need to be every third down, but I think if you do it enough and you get home, like he will shrivel up in a way that, I think is going to be advantageous for the Commanders.
All right, let's look at the Washington offense's matchup with the Atlanta defense. We'll do that next. He's Logan Paulsen. I'm Grant Paulsen. Take command as we get closer to a Sunday 1 o'clock tilt in Atlanta against the Falcons. Welcome back to Take Command. He's Logan Paulsen. I'm Grant Paulsen. Thanks for checking us out 3 times a week. We are looking ahead to the Atlanta Falcons, a 1 o'clock game on Sunday in Georgia. Atlanta's defense, Logan, comes into this game under Jeff Ulbrich, ranked number 3 in yards per play, 4.34. They're number 2 in yards per game. They're 13th against the run per play. They are 3rd against the pass. They're 11th in interception rate, and they are top 6 in sack rate. Now, here's the maybe symbolic nature of how heavy lifting the Vikings game is doing for this. Minnesota accounted for all but 2 of their sacks, and I know you've dove into this. I mean, go ahead and speak to just how much that game is still a factor in some of these numbers, and are they as good defensively as right now the numbers suggest?
Yeah, so I really like Jeff Ulbrich. He coached me when I was in Atlanta. He was there coaching, and so like he'd lift the same time I would do my second lift of the day. So I got to talk to him quite a bit.
Jeff
Really
Ulbrich
good.
would lift? I don't believe that.
Dude, get after. He's a former linebacker, bud. Like he's lifting all the time.
Well, that's a joke. Have you ever seen the guy? He looks like he looks like he eats his dinner in the gym and his lunch, and he's like he meets his kid for the first time, and they're like, "Hey, Dad, do you want to come home and hang out?" And he's like, "Come meet me in the gym. I'll talk to you there, son."
Yeah,
I mean, nobody likes the gym more than that guy.
Yeah, but great dude, really aggressive coach, and I really like the way he's coaching the defense. They're very aggressive. It reminds me a lot of actually Joe Witt in terms of what they're doing. They're playing a little bit man coverage. There's some zone principles in there. Like our changeup is cover 2, his changeup's cover 3 or quarters. But they want to be a man aggressive downhill pressure team, and I think that shows up. And I think it shows up pretty much every week that they're playing. Here's a 3rd and 7. We're going to bring some type of exotic pressure. Everyone's mugged up. Ours is AA. They kind of do some 4-man stuff because they've got, Jalen Walker, the guy from Georgia, who's a big but also a linebacker. So they can do some creative stuff with him. Anyway, after watching all the sacks, all the pressures, basically I came to this conclusion, are they good at rushing the passer? Are they better at rushing the passer than they were last year? Absolutely. Schematically, they're better. They've got better personnel. But that Minnesota game, dude, I felt so bad for JJ McCarthy. And it wasn't like this schematic overhaul. It was like they're on their 3rd string left tackle who gets absolutely roasted probably 3 times in that game, right? I'm not talking, it's not like, hey, we're on the 2nd string guy. Like Christian Darrisaw's out, his backup's in. No, it's the guy that's on practice squad who doesn't play at all is in there and just getting absolutely rolled. Then we have a bunch of mental mistakes on protections. The offensive line running into each other like Keystone Cops. There's one where they're running like a counter pass, so they're all blocking away, and the guard forgets to pull, and he kind of remembers middle of the play and then runs into the other guard, and there's a free runner, and JJ McCarthy gets smoked. So as much as I want to give them credit for creating all of these pressures, that was a bad game for Minnesota in terms of pressure. And again, Atlanta was able to capitalize. So do they do some complicated stuff from a pressure standpoint? Yes. But I think our coaching staff can memorize the patterns and understand what's going on. And we have enough veteran experience now on the offensive line to make sure we get that stuff cleaned up. I also think Cliff's going to do a good job of running the football again. We'll talk about that here more in a second, why that's important. And then they do have personnel. They got Pierce, who's good. Walker's coming on. He's not been super efficient as a pass rusher, but Pierce is kind of a specialty pitch guy, comes in on 3rd down. So to me, if you can kind of manage and mitigate the personnels you're in, the down and distance as much as possible, and not let them get to these fastball pitches. And then I think as an offensive coordinator, Cliff's smart enough to know that when it is a 3rd and 7, you're going to get heated up and you're going to get some kind of man coverage. So let's have man beating concepts and have a good plan for these pressure patterns. And I think you'll be able to handle it at a pretty high level.
I thought the trade they made on draft night was fairly inexplicable. You could make the case that they do that on draft night a couple years in a row, but going back up into the 1st round and giving up all that they did. But I will say Pierce has been really good since getting him on the field. 2nd in pressures among rookies to Abdul Carter, as I mentioned. Now, 4 of those were in that Vikings game. He was the beneficiary on the right side of the front of what you're talking about with a 3rd string left tackle. But they've got him and Jalen Walker on the edges, kind of standing up, putting their hand down, moving around. Leonard Floyd is a member of this defensive front as well. I mean, they've got some pros, right? They drafted this guy, Rook Aurora Rowe. Am I doing that right?
You got it. Yep.
Rook Aurora Rowe, 2nd round pick. There's some pieces here for the Falcons, man. So I think that they should, as this year goes on, actually have a pretty solid defense. And I'm not trying to belittle them being top 3 right now. I just don't think it's on this level. My question for them has been in the secondary, right, where they got a 4th rounder at nickelback right now and some questions, right? They're plugging in a rookie 3rd rounder at safety. And what does that look like? And are they going to be able to communicate on the back end and alleviate some big plays? How have they played in that regard so far?
Yeah, I think they played fine. I think obviously, gosh, what's his name? Their big time corner. I think he's hurt at the moment.
AJ
Gosh.
Terrell.
Yeah, AJ Terrell. He's hurt, right? He's nicked up.
I have not seen a injury report yet. I'll get one for you.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's nicked up. And so I do think you run into you got Billy Bowman, the guy from Oklahoma who's playing nickel, who has an interception this year and has made some nice plays on the football. But is a rookie, the physical tools are there, but I think there's an experience level that needs to be developed. Xavier Watts also has had some turnover luck this year in terms of creating them. He's the safety from Notre Dame. Good player. I know Fred Smoot loved him coming out. I think he was his number 1 or number 2 safety, like ahead of Nick Amon-Wari, who went to Seattle. So there are some talented young pieces in the back end, but like you said, there's a communication element that needs to be worked on. And I think the other thing too is I think when you look at the guys that are maybe the most impressive in the front are Zach Harrison, the converted defensive end who now plays like a 4-eye, Brandon Dorlus from Oregon, who is kind of like their other. They play a 3-4. So and then David Onyemata has done a really nice job. And so those 3 guys in the interior are probably the most consistent parts of the defense, which is cool to see. And then Divine Diablo, the guy that they got from Las Vegas, has done a great job. And then Caden Ellis is a great blitzer. So I do think they definitely have pieces. They definitely have talent. That's not the issue with them. I think it's just like they're a little bit undersized in the front. So can you lean on them a little bit and run the football? And then I think they're talented in the secondary. But like you said, can they consistently communicate? Can they consistently be on the same page? I think that's still a work in progress.
Ellis is a good player, that linebacker, number 55 for them. I don't know about Terrell yet because they haven't, as we record this, there haven't been an injury report. He's still, he missed last week with the hamstring. I just don't know what it's going to be moving forward. But yeah, he was hurt last week. All right, let's look at the Washington offense here. So first things first, what's your take on Daniels? What happens here? You know how I felt all along? I felt like this was the game that was going to be the question mark. I think based on how Mariota played, based on the fact that he's still in the big hulking brace, and as we record this, he hasn't practiced yet. I've got to assume that he's not 100% yet, and so if that's not the case by Sunday, I'm not playing him. But I would kind of roll for another week with Mariota, I think, barring him being completely okay.
Well, obviously we don't know what the injury is, which I think makes this a harder conversation to have. Like, is it his MCL? Is it his PCL? Is it a meniscus? Like all of those have different
kind of reasonable. According to The Athletic, they ruled out MCL. The team said it wasn't an MCL.
So if it's, let's say it's his PCL, like I think this is a very reasonable week to play. You know what I mean? And again, it just depends. This is where it comes down to him. It depends on him. It depends on the medical staff. It depends on like what you're seeing from him. Like are his, like for example, when I was in Atlanta, we had like a single leg test. Like you had to be able to do, it was like 2 times body weight on this special leg press machine they had for a set of 10 reps. And once you're able to do that, they're like, okay, you can play. Now, you can argue about the veracity of that return to play protocol. But I think if you feel good about his return to play, the force numbers look good. He feels stable. He feels safe. And the injury, again, they would have put him on IR if it was something serious. Like if it was a full, hypothetically, because you said it's not MCL, but if it was a full MCL tear, he'd be on IR. If it's an LCL tear, he'd be on IR. Like, so it's one of these kind of lesser knee tweaks, and like all of those, like the PCL, if it wasn't, like you said, it's not, but if it wasn't MCL, those are all kind of as tolerated in terms of return to play. So I think like that's where I would say, like, where's he at this week? Is he doing change of direction stuff? How does it feel? Does it get inflamed again? Are the anti-inflammatories working for him? All those things. So the answer is I don't know. But again, like if he's good to go and the training staff deems him good to go, I'm going to support that 100% because like based on how they've handled the injury and how they've talked about the injury, it seems like it's going to be like a true like week to week thing. So it could be this week, but like to your point, like if he's not feeling good and he hasn't responded to the treatment well, then shoot, like let Marcus Mariota play. He looked great last week. You got to give him another one against a former team.
Yeah. And it just to let everybody know, we're recording this before we find out if he goes on Wednesday. If he were to go out there and practice in full today on Wednesday, then yeah, you're probably in line to play. I don't think that's going to happen. I have not really expected that throughout this process. I think by the end of this week, you're hoping to get him out there and, ideally he does something Friday and it's a game time decision or something. But after the way Marcus Mariota played, I would be extra careful. I guess that's worth asking you that question. Would that be a factor for you in any way? I mean, it's 3 games this guy has played. You haven't missed a beat. There wasn't a single second of that game on Sunday where you were like, damn, if only we had Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, right.
That's not a factor at all. I mean, to me, it gives me a little more ability to kind of go to him and say, hey, man, we got the Chargers next week. Let's be 110%.
No, I think that I think it's a huge factor, right? I think
because Dan said it's not at the podium, but I don't buy that.
But I also think, I mean, it's a huge factor for Jaden Daniels too. Like if this thing's on fire, if the Las Vegas game's on fire and the offense doesn't look good, like Jaden's going to press more to get back. Like that's just how players are. Like when I had to miss one game and like the tight ends that played didn't play very well, and I was like, I got to get back because that was terrible. You know what I mean? And so, like that's part of the psychology too. And I do think it lets the medical staff make an informed decision, the correct decision. Because again, there's no pressure to get him back because you trust Marcus, right? The offensive staff, like when Dan comes and has his little conversation with Jaden, it's not like, shoot, we really got to have you this week. It's like, this is the best decision for you. So having that guy in the building, while it might not play a factor in terms of like, because Jaden's the guy, right? Jaden is the guy that's going to be, riding the horse in the battle whenever we want him to, because we think he's a difference maker at the position. At least that's what I think. I don't know how you feel about it, but like,
of course,
he's going to be the dude, right? So like, I think that's what Dan's referring to. It doesn't really matter, but it does let you kind of parse out the decision a little bit more deliberately, I think, and maybe which I think is awesome. So.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when he's ready, he plays. I think it's also a bad thing that when a player is ready and feels healthy, if he doesn't get right back out there. Like, I grinded. I did everything, man. Put me back out there. I'm for that. I just, there is this narrative out there that, like, they're just protecting him and, like, slowly bringing him along. And I'm like, we don't know that. We don't know how hurt he is. We don't know how healthy he is. Someone called in yesterday and they're like, he's 95%, they should hold him out and it's the right thing to do. I'm like, we don't know if he's 95%. He could be 40% right now. Yeah. And they're being purposefully vague. They're answering nothing, which is their prerogative. And it's what I would do too. And I came up kind of learning from Mike Shanahan, who did the same thing, by the way. So I'm not knocking that, but at the same time, like, it does lead to some speculation and some wondering. And they also still haven't said he broke his rib last year. So I don't believe anything they say about his injury, Like Jaden Daniels said this offseason, I broke my rib. They still haven't said that. I'm still waiting on them telling me he broke. It's like, why is he getting wrapped on the sideline? They're like, because he was cold. Like, no, bro. It's because he broke his rib. Like, that's why. So forgive me for being a critical thinker and being interested in the face of the franchise, who's a fringe MVP, who may or may not be the next Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, and Lamar. Like, I'm going to keep being curious about what's going on with the face of the franchise, for sure. Wide receiver position. Speaking of injuries, Terry McLaurin in the quad. So Noah Brown was out last week. He's kind of the de facto number 2 in terms of traditional receiver, but that's 2 of your top 3 guys if he can't go, and we don't know. I have no idea what's going on with the quad. He's getting a second opinion. Here's my question to you first as a former player. Everyone's saying he would not be getting a second opinion if he didn't get bad news. Is that even true? Like, I don't buy that.
No, dude, that's definitely not true.
Right? I mean, don't you get a second opinion just to get information? Like, everyone's like, oh, that's a bad sign.
It's just good practice, and I think a lot of teams encourage that, so for example, like the doctor will be like, hey, so this is when I was in Atlanta, got my MRI. He was like, it's a grade 2 MCL, like your PCL was torn a little bit too, like whatever. I immediately take that x-ray image, which the doctor provides me. He says, here, this is yours. I send it to my agent. He sends it to his person. He confirms the diagnosis, and then we move on, right? Like, that's it. Because, like, as much as, like, he's the team doctor and I trust him, like, I love all the team doctors here in Washington. Like, Annunziata is one of the best orthos in the country, like, really top shelf. So, like, he's fantastic, but just as good practice, like, maybe he reads the MRI a little bit differently. Maybe he sees the swelling a little bit differently. Maybe whatever, you know what I mean? It's just good practice to get that done. And then it takes any of the incentive away from the team. So, like, in this case, like, when you said that, I'm sure the team was like, hey, it's this, I think you're going to be fine. And Terry, good practice, take it to somebody. It's the same image. Take it to somebody else. He reads it. Hey, Terry, no, I think it's probably 2 weeks, right? Like, Santana Moss has a bunch of stories when he was in New York where the doctors didn't handle it well. They give him They give him his image. He goes to someone else. They're like, actually, I think this is like way more serious than they're letting on. He follows the second opinion. They go in for the surgery. It is way more significant than they thought. And Santana's right. It's just a way to protect yourself. And so most athletic training rooms encourage that. They'll even bring it up. They're like, hey, this is what our guy said, but if you want a second opinion, here's the image, send it to whoever you want. So it's your job. It's your industry. Take care of it.
Yeah, I think it's well said. Me saying it is speculative. You doing it, you lived it. So that's why I asked you the question. All right, so then let's talk receiver position with or without him. So what if there is a world where he doesn't play and Noah Brown doesn't play? Like, yeah, it's getting thin early, my guy.
It's getting very thin.
Has Tana sprinted this week?
That's a good question. I think he probably could still do it, by the way, which is crazy considering he's 45 years old. So what I would say is like it. You know, you're navigating a lot of depth issues. You're still navigating the John Bates thing. And so, like, I think you've got a good solution there. Obviously, Zach Ertz is going to be a big part of the passing game. Debo is going to be a big part of the passing game. I will say, and maybe I'm being overly optimistic, I was really encouraged by Luke's performance last week. I don't know how you feel about that, but I was really encouraged by how he looked. And then also Moore. I think Moore has been very consistent in kind of his spot duty. So can you survive the week or can you survive 2 weeks with those guys? And then you get Jalen Lane kind of in a larger offensive role. Is it ideal? No, but it feels like you could offset some of that if necessary, especially if you're getting production from the special teams the way they got last week.
Well, at some point, somebody needs some credit then, right? If we're saying like they dominate the Raiders with all the injuries they had last week, and then they go to Atlanta, and let's say you get a win, but in a world where you're talking about like, you know, maybe Luke is ready to be elevated, and maybe Jalen Lane makes a few plays, and Chris Moore, like this type of number of injuries for a team that the perception was like Jaden Daniels and the Island of Misfit Toys nationally last year. Not to mention that the cupboard was bleak after Rivera left in terms of depth and talent and so many bad drafts and the lack of depth that they had. Like I don't know if it's Peters or it's, you know, him and his whole crew or what, but like someone needs to take a bow if they can get by with this stuff not really adding up or mattering for losses or dropping off substantially.
I think it's a good point. Like, you know, you're like, so in the context of this hypothetical scenario with the injury, right? You've developed Luke enough where you feel like he could play potentially, question mark there, but I am optimistic after last week. And then obviously more like getting experienced guys, who've played a lot of football helps offset depth always, right? Because they've experienced it, they've done it, you trust them. And I think that's what you're getting from him, who also played great on special teams, by the way. So again, Jalen Lane, I think, is still a little bit of a developmental piece as a receiver. But like I said, like this team last week played great complementary football. Now, I think the bigger issue is can the defense perform the way they did in the first three quarters with the injuries in the secondary? That is the big storyline for me. I think you can offset some of the stuff you're doing offensively. Again, maybe we don't run this kind of route because this player is in, and maybe we don't run this run because we don't have these tight ends or whatever. You can offset some of that. Defensively, you have been who you've been since the first OTA. You have been who you've been since Tampa Bay last year, and you kind of had to put on a mask because it wasn't working out. But how does the safety affect the defense's ability to support the offense? Because if they're not getting defensive support, the offense, then it becomes now we have to press. Now we have to get out of our comfort zone. Now Marcus Mariota or whoever is the quarterback has to elevate this group in a way that they didn't have to last week because they played great defense. They ran the football well. They found play action shots, and they got 2 returns on teams. If that dynamic shifts and those other positions, those other phases of the game become less dominant, then obviously the offense needs to be more efficient. And what does that look like with that group? I think that's maybe the question. So,
in terms of trying to run the ball against this Atlanta defense, it's been pretty stout so far. Look, this is not the week to stand on the table and go crazy about carries for anybody because McNichols hit a homer. Rodriguez was effective. The plan worked. You know, what they want to do is working. I just can't stop watching Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt and feeling like, please God, more than 7, 8, 9 carries. Like what happens with 17, 18 carries? But maybe this is the week. We'll see. I found a couple interesting things when looking up some numbers on him. I want to bounce off you to get some takes on. So he is running early this season, very small sample size, but the highest percentage of carries against a 8 or more man box belongs to Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt.
Really?
Yeah, at 41%. And it's weird to me because it's not like he's been a short yardage back at all. So there's no real skewed numbers there. But I'm wondering, I noticed it's a lot of stuff out of like 12 personnel.
Yeah.
So maybe they go heavy and then a team kind of adjusts. The other thing I'm wondering is there some feeling like, okay, when this guy's in the game, they're not having him run routes. They don't want him in pass protection. So he's probably going to be used as a ball carrier. I don't know. Like, you tell me, why do you think that would be? It's an early sample, but it's something I'm tracking here.
Yeah, I think it's more the personnel thing because like he got all of his carries last week, versus the Raiders in 13 personnel.
Why can't I get him like a gun run at a spread? Why not? What are we waiting for?
I would assume, I don't know, he's a young back. I would assume it's protection related. So I think like you're going to do more passes from a gun run look, with an 11 personnel. Like you have to be able to stay balanced there. And so if you don't feel comfortable with protection, and again, I haven't seen him make any like huge errors, but again, he hasn't really been given the opportunity. So I'm assuming the reason you're kind of keeping that close to the vest is because you trust McNichols or Rodriguez more with those responsibilities, which makes sense. It's their second year in the offense. And like I had a coach tell me one time, I was a rookie actually, and John Embry looked at me and said, like, the way I look at protecting the quarterback, I just imagine my mom's playing quarterback and who I want out there to protect him. Like, who do I trust the most? And so it was me or Fred Davis, and I got the nod. You know what I mean? So like I really had to study and make sure I was locked in on that stuff. And that was my one thing that I did for the game. So I do think like people sleep on it as a pass protection as a thing that like, he's get him the ball, throw him the ball, run the ball with him. Like, yes, but that is a piece of the position. And the other piece of the position is extremely, extremely critical, right? In terms of saying like, this is the franchise. And whether it's Marcus Mariota or Jaden Daniels, like we cannot have mental mistakes in pass protection. And if he's not there yet, and I'm very confident he'll get there, he's a very smart guy. He's just not ready yet. And so, like, I'm going to give it to people that I trust, which is McNichols and Rodriguez at the moment. And again, that's going to limit his exposure to some of those gun opportunities like you're talking about.
This is Janine Paulsen, more importantly.
Janine.
Yeah, this is Janine Paulsen back there. Let's protect Janine.
We got to protect Janine.
All right, give me I want a multiple choice of your mom's name. I'm going to guess it, but I need give me 4 options.
Okay.
And I'm going to guess your mom's name.
Susan, Elizabeth, Brenda, and I don't know, Linda.
We're going to go Linda.
No.
Okay. You said I don't know, so that was my like, oh, he's throwing me off the trail. So we'll go Brenda.
No.
Oh, wow. I botched it. All right, then I'm going to go for the whole 4 here. Susan. Let's go. Susan Paulsen. What a big fan of Susan and Janine Paulsen. All right, take command. Next, let's give you my FanDuel prop that I like. Plus, we'll hit the special teams, couple of kickers that are struggling to make field goals in this game. That could be interesting on Sunday. And we'll get Logan's final thoughts on who eats. That's all coming up on Take Command. Take command with Logan Paulsen and Grant Paulsen. Welcoming you back. Just a few minutes left on the pod for this episode. The pick segment that I'm about to do is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. The Commanders are 1.5-point road favorites as they hit Atlanta. I think that line is wrong. I think they should probably be favored by 2.5 or 3 points. I like them to win this game by a field goal or more. If they won it by 7 or 8, that would not surprise me in any way. I think they're going to get to 3-1. I like Washington minus 1.5 in Atlanta in this game. Again, our picks segment is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Logan, how do you feel about the matchup kind of big picture? I think we both like the idea of the Raiders being on short rest, but Commanders tight 1.5-point line. Like, what do you make of them against Atlanta from a 10,000-foot view?
Yeah, I actually like that line a little bit more than you probably do. And the reason I do is I think they're banged up. You know what I mean? It's the injuries. I think on the surface, the culture here is more established. The offensive coordinator is doing a better job. I think the defensive coordinator is doing a great job. And they're better coached. The culture's better. I just think you're getting thin on bodies, man. Thin on boots on the ground. We're talking about if Terry doesn't play, we lose a lot of explosive offensive production. If Will Harris doesn't play, if Percy Butler doesn't, we know Will Harris isn't going to play, but if Percy Butler doesn't play, you're in kind of, again, I think you're in a land of good football players. I love Jeremy Reeves as a football player, but again, limited as a coverage player. Tyler Owens, young, inexperience. Like it's just I get nervous, man, about when you're getting people into new roles.
My saying that I came up with was next man up is fine. Next man up is a problem.
Yes.
Right? This whole idea that like it's macho and it doesn't matter who's in there. We're all in this thing together. Well, when a guy plays, that's fine. When a couple guys plays, that's fine. It's like a person is okay, but people aren't,
Yeah,
like
right.
when it's an entire secondary of dudes who have never played together, weird. Geno Smith is moving the ball down the field all of a sudden. It's not the same. There's a reason why starters are starters. And I wouldn't say that the Commanders are subscribing fully to like the Niners or the Rams, like stars and scrubs philosophy, but they don't have the depth yet. It takes time to build that up. So your really good players have to be really good players. I certainly understand that. How about the kicking game here? Not something we'll break down every single week, but the Falcons cut. They did the thing Commanders fans are calling for, right? They got rid of the veteran kicker who used to be really good, who's really struggling. Young Waku going back to last year, it had been a mess. So they cut him. They went and got John Parker Romo, and he missed 2 kicks last week. This is one of those like grass is not always greener. And Commanders fans should know this. When you start getting on the hamster wheel of kickers, sometimes you can't get off.
Not good. Not good. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how he handles it this week. Kickers are such a psychological bunch, man. Like, and I will say this about Gay. I think he's done a good job of not riding the roller coaster too extremely. Like, he seems pretty level. This kid, watching the film, like you could tell he was like, I missed one really wide right. I'm going to like change my approach. Now I'm going to miss one really wide left. And so like, I don't like when I see my kicker like change the setup. Like that gets me really nervous because I'm like, where's your head at? Like just kick the dang ball the way you kicked it every single time in practice. Like why are we fiddling with our deal here? So I don't know. That could be a factor for sure in this game. I'm curious to see how he comes out mentally and like in terms of kicking this ball. But yeah, man, like kickers, funny bunch to coach. And it's crazy how much impact they can have on a game.
All right, you know how I like to end these Take Command preview pods, who eats? So we'll start on offense here for the Commanders. We don't know about Terry McLaurin. We're not really sure who's going and who isn't at receiver. Don't know if Bates is back, so it makes it a little complicated. But who do you like here in this matchup just based on the Atlanta personnel?
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and to me, it's got to just be like the Commanders' running back room. You know what I mean? Like I think that group is going to be the one that eats because I think they're going to be featured very heavily, especially for nicked up at receiver. Like we're going to lean into that. We're going to find creative ways to win the football. I think a little bit of Deebo Samuels, maybe a little bit of Jalen Lane on some specialty runs, and just see if we can kind of get a similar result to last week. Because I do think, like you said, I think that the Falcons are decent at stopping the run. I do think there are times they're an undersized, quick front where you can kind of move them off the ball and create some seams. And like when you kind of go through the run cut-ups, there are some gashes in there. So can you maximize that? And I think obviously you mentioned Bill. I think C-Rod had a very solid game and McNichols did a great job. But I think a heavy dose of those guys is going to be in the forecast for this week.
You've done a really good job with that running back room, man. I mean, B-Rob's in San Fran and Eckler's on the IR, and these 3 guys look like they can all give you something in different ways.
Well, I think isn't it just like how the running back position is? Like they're just good football players, Yes. Just a bunch of good football players, and like this is it. Like it's a saturated market, and you can just find them kind of wherever. So
defense, who do you like?
Yeah, this one's tough for me because again, like I think really the guys that need to eat are guys like Dorrance Armstrong. I think he needs to have a great game on first and second down to get to that third down stuff. I think he's going to really take advantage of that Wilkerson matchup, but I think you got to earn that opportunity. So can you play consistent, physical, hard-nosed football on first down and then have enough juice in the tank to rush the passer? I think he will. He's done a great job of that all year, but he's a guy that I think is poised for a big day.
That's the NFL league leader, according to PFF, in pressures and pressure rate.
How crazy
Dorrance
is that?
Armstrong. He's playing his butt off, man.
I know. It's awesome.
I spent the whole offseason worrying about the pass rush, and right now the Commanders are top 10 in sacks and number 1 in pressure percentage. So Joe Witt dialing it up. It has worked to this point. We'll see if that can continue as the season goes on. Next time you see and hear from us, we'll be at Northwest. Well, I guess we won't be at the stadium, but after the game, when the Commanders are in Atlanta to take on the Falcons on Sunday, Logan will be traveling, so I'll have Kedrick Golston with me, I believe. We'll have a live post-game breakdown as soon as the game ends, and then Logan's film review early next week. Big thanks to everybody for checking us out. YouTube, 1067 Team 980, as well as wherever you get your audio. We are back after the game. enjoy Commanders football. Thanks for checking out Take Command.